Good afternoon. This is Dr. David back with another episode, my monthly episode, apparently, of Fresh Start with Dr. David. And I'm glad to be back with you. It's been almost about a month. And as you know, I kind of changed the frequency of doing these episodes just because of my schedule. Which is a good thing. I like being busy. I like having things to do. I like feeling like I'm being productive and making a difference, especially in the mental health industry and self-improvement industries. So I am back with an episode that I hope that you'll appreciate because it's something that we all have to deal with more and more often these days. And it's becoming ever more clear and evident that it's going to be a permanent part of our existence. And that is the need to regulate our emotions or emotional management. So that's what today's topic is about. I'll also mention a few things. So as you may or may not know, I do now have 4 support groups. This is something that I'm committed to doing. As you know, my practices, Atlanta Holistic Mental Health and Wellness, Atlanta Coaching and Hypnotherapy Associates, and Atlanta Health and Wellness are all boutique practices. I don't take insurance. I do accept payments from HSAs and FSAs, which are, healthcare spending accounts and flexible healthcare spending accounts. But I don't bill insurance, and you can listen to my prior episodes for my opinions about insurance companies and how that works and those kind of things. And, I'll just say this, in terms of insurance, and that's definitely been a topic of interest politically these days with the government shutdown and everything, which is a whole nother topic. But, healthcare insurance is good if it's good if you need surgery. It's good if you need procedures done, diagnostic tests, regular kind of testing, annual, complete physical examinations and things like that. But the insurance marketplace is basically kind of a regulator for industries that have high volume. And see, my practice is exactly the opposite of that. A lot of practices these days, good or for bad, whatever, it depends on the circumstance, kind of operate like Sam's Club, Walmart, Costco, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, things like that. They're kind of fast food oriented, as many people in and as many people out, and kind of one size fits all, which is the exact opposite of my practices, if you know anything about me. So that's the reason why I don't take insurance. That's one of the reasons why I don't take insurance. There's a number of other ones. But as such, I'm not absolutely cheap to come see. But here's the thing. You get what you pay for in life. So if you come to see me, and you get a package or you get a plan or you just scheduled an individual visit or group of visits, you're going to get your money's worth. You're going to be happier. You're going to be better. You're going to be wealthier. You're going to make better decisions. You're going to be more confident. Your whole life is going to change, but that's because you're making an investment. And just like real estate or the stock market or gold or platinum or silver or anything else, or a car or, whatever the commodity is, your return, your revenue is a direct reflection of what you've put in, or another word for that would be your investment, right? So what you get as a return or result is a direct result of your investment or what you put in. And so that's the basis of my practice. And, you can schedule a discovery appointment at my office for as little as $100. And that's for an hour, for a 60 to 90 minute appointment. So we can see if what I have to offer you matches what you need. And if it doesn't, then I'll help you find someone who does. And there's no extra charge for that. So anyway, if there's a will, there's a way. So if there's a will to do something, a desire, sincere, honest, full desire, then there's a way it can happen, right? And all you have to do is look at our ancestors to see how and why that happened. So anyway, I always say, if there's a will, there's a way. And I'm always willing to meet all of the people who come to see me halfway, at least halfway, sometimes even more. So anyway, I did start 4 groups that make my services more affordable. It's a great way to jump in a healthcare system or mental health system. If you are of limited resources, if you don't have insurance, if you're currently on medication management or seeing a psychotherapist and you need a little bit more, or if you're just looking for practical ways to move beyond things like procrastination or, just kind of midlife crises or adjustment periods or work management and work-life balance, things like that. So check out my groups. You can see them on Facebook. They're also in other places, but the main hub that you can find them on is Facebook. And I have a support group for anger management that meets monthly. I've got a support group for burnout, fatigue, and exhaustion that meets monthly. I've got a group for ADD, ADHD, distraction, lack of focus, lack of concentration, all those kind of things, and just kind of life management and organization. And then I also have one for people with symptoms or complaints related to anxiety, worry, racing thoughts, rumination, OCD, panic attacks, things like that. So check out my monthly groups. You can find them on my Facebook page. There are links to them also on my practice pages in Facebook and also on my Facebook groups. So with that said, I will jump into today's topic, which is emotional management. And the key word here, well, there's 2 keywords, emotion, which is one, but in my opinion, the more important word is management, right? We, in our present evolution as humans on this planet that's being ever more populated by technology, AI, robots, and things like that, we're tasked with managing things, right? That's what we have computers and things for. But because of the environment we're in, we have to manage more of our affairs. You can't just be a carpenter and that's all you do is make wood, products and services and goods, and that's all you do, and you don't have to know about other things. You do have to know about other things in this life, because if not, you'll drown and you'll get taken advantage of. So we are tasked with managing things, managing our memories, managing our daily schedules, managing our time, managing our desires, managing our impulses, managing our cravings, because everything's available these days, and most importantly, managing our emotions. And just like everybody else, I'm not a stranger to that. So, I'm going to jump into this topic, and this will still be kind of a regular length podcast episode, probably to 12 to 15 minutes. But basically, I want you to look at emotional management and emotional currency and emotion differently, right? As you know, there's a difference between feelings, emotions, and thoughts, right? And if you want to talk about that, you can schedule an appointment at my office. You can also check out some of the previous podcast episodes that I've done. But there's a difference between a thought, a feeling, and an emotion, right? But they all are different forms of energy, right? So that's kind of the analogy that I want to use for this episode. As you know, I love analogies. I think analogies allow you kind of to twist and adjust and fluctuate your thinking about things, which means that you are able to come up with solutions, right? So if you don't have solutions to things, if you change how you think or how you feel or how you emote or how you process information or how you review things or analyze things, then you're probably going to get some solutions, right? And that's what we're looking for here is solutions, right? Solutions that allow you to have a fresh start in life every single day, right? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about emotions, right? And feelings, right? Like happiness and joy and bliss and anger. And what's the further end of anger? Rage, right? Road rage is a big topic these days, or just rage where people just lose it, basically. They go from 0 to 180 or 0 to 360, just like that. And, when that happens, people do things that they normally would not do. They do things that they normally would reason through and avoid, but they don't, right? And that's why I want to use energy instead of emotional. So when you think about your management of your emotions, your emotional management, right? Your anger management, your rage management, your, I guess, happiness management. I guess that needs to be managed to some extent too, right? Especially depending on what's creating your happiness or joy, right? Especially if it's substance related, like coffee or alcohol and things like that, right? It definitely has to be regulated or managed, or it's going to be out of control. So I want you to think about emotions like energy, right? Like electricity. They all start with the letter E, so that makes it a little bit easier to think about. But think about emotion as energy, right? Energy in the form of electricity, but energy in any form, right? When you think about energy, you know that energy has to be stored, right? Or generally it is stored, right? And it's transmitted from one place to another, right? It moves, right? It doesn't sit in one place, although it can. But it can move, it can stay in one place, it can go back and forth. But there's one thing that has to happen with energy. It has to be managed and it has to be balanced, right? We live in a ever increasing electrical world. In fact, I just saw an article recently about how they're going to now, and I guess you could use it in every capacity that your mind could possibly imagine, but they're going to use light to power things instead of electricity, right? And of course, light is basically a photon, right? And so photons are energy, right? And so that makes sense because light is energy, and the speed of energy makes a big difference. And the speed of light is a high speed. So if you want to transmit energy faster, use light. That kind of makes sense, right? But I want you to think about it that because energy, electricity, all those things have to be managed and balanced, right? If you've got too much electricity going into anything, your computer, your phone, your laptop, when you plug it in, if it's not regulated, right? And that's called capacitance, right? What is the capacitance of a circuit or something to accept or deny electricity or energy, right? So there has to be a regulation of it, right? You can call it capacitance. You can call it a lot of different things depending on if you're looking at it from a physics standpoint or electrical engineering standpoint or whatever you're looking at it from. But energy has to be managed, right? It has to flow. It has to flow in a certain direction at a certain speed and things like that. It has to be managed. And a battery is a way of doing that. A battery is a way of storing currency, right? Kind of like your bank account stores financial currency, which is money, right? So that's why batteries exist. And more things in this world are being run by batteries, including cars, right? So a battery is basically a setup where you've got an anode and a cathode. The anode, an meaning not or no or null or zero, is the negative end, and the cathode is the positive end, right? So you've got a negative node and a positive node within a battery, right? And energy travels back and forth between them, kind of like waves in an ocean, right? So it's not by accident that we call water that moves back and forth in an ocean waves, right? Or a current, right? It happens in waves, right? It's a shift back and forth, a balance, right? A pendulum. Same thing with a battery. Energy gets transferred back and forth, and that allows things to run, right? And generally, that's in the form of electrons. The same thing is true about your mind and your brain and your emotions, right? The way that you have to look at managing and regulating your emotions is kind of like a battery. For negative things, you have to have something to balance them out. For positive things or things that are overly positive, you've got to have something to balance those out too. You don't want too many highs and too many lows, right? Generally speaking, in psychiatry or mental health, we call that bipolar disorder. People whose brain, the part of their brain that's supposed to regulate how excited they get or how down they get, those people, depending on which one they lean towards more most of the time and how severe those episodes are, have what you call bipolar 1 disorder or bipolar 2 disorder, right? Depending on whether they're more of a depressed state most of the time or more of a manic or hypomanic state. But basically, that's what bipolar disorder is. It's basically someone who cannot manage their emotions, or their brain has struggles doing it for one reason or another, right? It could be anatomical. It could be physiological. It's probably a combination of both. It could be something that they're ingesting or some substance that causes that to happen that doesn't affect other people. But the key thing is that you want to be somewhere in the middle. That doesn't mean you can't go up and down, but you don't want too many extremes. And if you get extremes, those are called polarities, right? And that's where the term bipolar comes from. But I want you to start out by looking at your emotions in terms of waves. Some waves are more positive, some waves are more negative, right? If you translate that analogy to analytical chemistry, which is something I definitely recall because I didn't get a good grade in it. I got a C. I couldn't believe it in college. But anyway, I wasn't a big fan of that class anyway. But one thing I did learn is and it stuck with me, and I think it's the most important thing that I learned about that subject, is buffering, the notion of buffering. Buffering is when you have something that makes whatever you're talking about resistant to extremes, right? In the field of mental health practice, you could use an antipsychotic or a mood stabilizer to do that, right? Or you could use a heavy metal like lithium, right? Which used to be the gold standard for the management of bipolar disorder, even though it's not anymore. And so you need a buffer. You need buffers in your life. You need buffers, insurance policies, things that allow compromise and soft landings to happen to prevent extremes. So I will talk more about emotion management in the future, but the most important thing that you need to do is learn to manage your emotions, just like we've learned to manage electricity and energy, right? And that means you have to plan ahead of time. The most important thing that you can do is be proactive and preemptive in preventing shifts or polarities in your emotions or your feelings, right? And that allows you to be what we call stable. And stability truly is the goal. Stability represents balance, right? And that's what we want. So anyway, I went a little bit over on this one. Stay tuned for another episode about this topic, but the most important thing is that realize that your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts, all those things need to be managed. You need to have a plan to manage them. If you fail to plan, then plan to fail. And so if you know something triggers you emotionally or psychologically or, cognitively, then the first thing you need to do is plan ahead before it happens so you can respond in a way that doesn't jeopardize your ability to be stable. And with that, I'm gone. You take care. This is Dr. David once again with another episode of Fresh Start with Dr. David. Please feel free to join or visit my practices online, Atlanta Holistic Mental Health and Wellness, Atlanta Coaching and Hypnotherapy Associates, and Atlanta Health and Wellness Coaching with convenient offices located in Sandy Springs and Buckhead. You take care. Bye-bye.